and today I'm out in the garden and it is early spring. It is the end of March and we've had some nicer weather and I'm so excited to get out here and get some things done in the garden. And this is the time of year, if you didn't already do it in the fall, this would be the time to go ahead and get your raspberries all ready and pruned up for the growing season. So behind me here I have my summer bearing raspberries, and then over on the other side I have an everbearing / fall bearing variety. So I wanted to take you along with me today as I go ahead and get these pruned up. I want to show you how to do that for each type. Let's say you have some raspberry canes already at your property and you don't know what variety they are, what type they are, whether they're summer bearing or everbearing / fall bearing. So we'll just talk about the different ways to prune them and how you can tell what kind you have. So yeah, as I said, there are two types. So you have your summer bearing variety, which just like it sounds, it's going to bear once during the summer. For us here, it's usually starts in July and goes for about 4 weeks or so, 4 to 5 weeks. And then you're going to have what's called an everbearing or fall bearing variety. They're called everbearing or fall bearing because depending on how you decide to prune them, you can get an everbearing, you can get a summer and a fall harvest that year, or you can choose to prune it in a way that will just get you a fall harvest on those. And usually if you do it that way, you'll get a bigger harvest in the fall. So it just kind of depends on what you're after. But the first one I'm going to go through are the summer bearing. So I have those behind me here, and I already did this row. I already pruned all of the old dead canes out. So this one's all ready. I have 2 more rows behind me that I have to do. With the summer bearing varieties, you are going to have what's called a primo cane that grows up on its first year. So you're going to see this green growth, what's starting to come out of the ground in the spring, and it grows up and up and up, and it'll be nice and green, but you're not going to have any berries on it this year. The following year, that same cane then just becomes a flora cane, and on that cane, the second year, it will produce flowers, and then you're going to get your raspberries on it. So what you want to do is when you go to prune your raspberry canes, like I said, you want to do this either in the fall after the frost comes, after everything is dormant, or in the early spring before you see any signs of the raspberries coming to life again. That's the best time to do it. So you're going to want to go through and cut out any dead canes, any dead flora canes that produced berries the previous year, because those are just dead. They're not going to do anything anymore. You want to get rid of the old canes, and then you're going to want to thin out anything that is really small, anything that's really thinner than a pencil size. You don't really want those canes. They're not going to do much for you. And instead of the plant trying to put more energy into those things that aren't going to produce much, it's better to just cut those down, get rid of them, so it can concentrate on producing the fruit on the nice canes that you have. So I'll go ahead and go to this other part that I haven't gotten to yet, and I'll show you close up what we're talking about. So you want to go through and look for any canes that are old and woody, the old flora canes from last year. And you can tell which ones those are by looking at, you can see that there was some action here. You can see that there were growth on here from berries and flowers from last year. And those canes always look really brown and woody. So those, you're just going to want to go ahead and cut it out. And you want to cut it just as close to the dirt as you can. So you go through and find all of those, and then you're going to want to go through, as I said, and cut out anything. Hey, Donnie boy. You want to go through and cut out anything that is smaller than a pencil, as I said. Even if you have a lot of really nice canes, but if they're too close together, that's really not the best. You do want it to have a little bit of room to have some airflow, and you want the sun to be able to get onto those onto those canes so that they can produce a good amount of berries for you. So anything that is crowded too much, maybe just cut out a couple more canes just to get it to be able to breathe a little bit better. You also want to keep in mind that your primal canes are going to be growing up in the spring too, and they're going to be tall and green and bushy, so there's some extra, what are you doing, boy? So there's going to be some extra foliage growing up, so keep that in mind when you're trying to get it thinned out properly. So I have a thorned variety of raspberries. A lot of people prefer the thornless, and I understand why. I transplanted this patch here. I started with about 5 or 6 canes 7 years ago, and they were somewhere on the property when we moved here, and I just transplanted them over here, let them go wild, and we've had a good raspberry harvest off of these. Generally speaking, I'd say that thorn varieties of fruiting, things like raspberries and blackberries, you're gonna get a little bit more production usually with a thorn variety at the trade-off of dealing with the thorns. So depending on what you're after, but these have been good for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. So as I said, this was an old floricane. You can see where the old berries and flowers had grown. It's brown and woody. So I'm just gonna take my clippers and, I was gonna say, because they're thorns, having a thick pair of leather gloves is really a good thing to have. Protect your hands. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take my clippers here. So I'm following it down. This one is the old one. So I'm just gonna go down to the bottom and clip it off. And you can use handheld pruning shears too. It doesn't have to be these huge ones, but I just find it to be easier. You see these little, it's a little spindly thing. We don't want that. We're gonna just get rid of that. This is old and thin. Gonna get rid of that. This one here, another old floricane. So we're gonna go ahead and clip that out. See how this is actually a floricane that will potentially bloom this year, but it is so thin. So that's an example right here of, I don't know, let me see if I can get you closer. See how thin this one is? That's just gonna waste its energy. So we wanna get rid of that one. Let's see. Here's another dead one. Bloomed last year. Again, these ones are tiny, small. Don't want those. Get rid of those. That's an old cane. Also an old one. Alright. So, as you can see, it's a pretty simple process. If you have a lot of raspberries, it is a little time consuming. So the summer bearing variety, there's a little bit more involved than with pruning your fall bearing ones, which I'll get to in a minute. I'll show you that. So you kind of have to go through and take a little more time than the other variety. So I have all of these here, and then I also have a whole row over on the orchard side. A couple years ago, I made a video on transplanting my raspberry patch. I dug up a bunch of canes and transplanted them over to the orchard side. And I've been trying to wait for those to get really established before I take all of these out of my garden. I'm trying to clear out my regular garden space because raspberries are so invasive. They just kind of spread and the canes kind of just want to go everywhere, and I really would like them out of my garden. So keep that in mind when you're planting your raspberries, to put them in a place that they can spread and not really worry about taking over your other parts of your garden. But yeah, so if you want to check out that video, I do talk about a little bit about pruning in that video as well, but it's mostly about transplanting raspberries. So I'll link that video below in the description if you want to check that one out. But as you can see, there's a good airflow here. There's good airflow. That'll have enough room up here to get good airflow and grow and bloom. So the other thing to keep in mind when pruning your raspberries is sometimes you get these really tall ones. I have canes that I think are probably maybe 10, 11 feet tall. So I'm gonna cut them down a little bit. I'm gonna trim them and I'll show you here. So this is a cane that's super tall. It's probably 12, 11 feet tall or something like that. But it doesn't need to be that tall, and your berries you're not going to get as many berries towards the top. So they say the best thing to do is to trim, just trim them down, and always cut right above a node where that is. So I would trim it probably to right here, and then that's going to just concentrate more efforts on getting you more berries down at the bottom. So yeah, that's the basics of pruning your summer bearing raspberries. So now I'm going to head over to the everbearing / fall bearing raspberries and show you how to prune those properly. And then we'll talk about exactly how it is that you can tell the difference between the two types if you don't know what you have. Okay, so here are my everbearing / fall bearing variety of raspberries behind me. These are also a thorned variety. So as I said before, it's called everbearing or fall bearing because you can decide if you want to prune these so that you get 2 harvests in the season, or if you want to just get the one bigger fall harvest. So it just depends how you prune it. So how these grow is the first year you're going to see a green cane growing up, and you're going to start seeing them pop up here early in the spring, and they're going to grow up and up and up and tall, tall, tall. And on those first year canes, unlike the summer bearing variety, on that first year cane, you are going to get fruit. You're going to get berries all along just the top portion of this cane on its first year. And you can see that's what this cane did. So you can see how we had berries on here last year. And then, so if you decided you wanted to keep this cane and get it for a summer harvest next year, you can go ahead and clip off right underneath where the berries ended. Let's see. So right here, so right above the next node down here, you could clip this off. I'll just show you. Where is it? For an example. I'm probably going to cut all these to the ground actually, but for an example, I'll cut it. There you go. So this is the second year now. We're on the second year for this cane, and you can see these nodes are starting down here, and you can see that they're going to bloom this year. So this summer you can get a harvest off of the bottom portion of this cane. The bottom 2/3 is where the summer berries come on, and that first year, the fall, is more like the top third of the cane. So you could decide to go through and just chop all the old dead fall harvest berries from last year and then keep those canes so that you'll have a summer harvest this year. And then after those berries come on for the summer harvest, and that's the second year of that cane's life, it's going to be done then. So then after that, in the fall, after your harvest is over, frost came, and they're going into dormancy, you could go ahead and just remove that cane, cut it down to the bottom, or wait till the spring and do it. So that's how you prune it if you want to get a fall and a summer harvest off of each cane. Now, if you're just looking for a fall harvest off of them, and generally if you prune it for a fall harvest only, you're gonna just cut all the canes down to the ground level. This way it is so much easier. You don't need to go through and pick and choose. You just go ahead and chop them all down to ground level. And again, you can do this in late fall or early spring. Then they're just gonna start growing up, the green canes in the spring, and by the time fall comes around, they're gonna have a bunch of berries growing at the top part of all the canes like that. So yeah, that's the easy way to do that though. So this is for an everbearing / fall bearing variety. You just cut it down to the ground and then you'll have a big harvest in fall, early fall, late summer. And it's really wonderful. Like I do recommend getting both varieties, like get the summer bearing and the fall bearing, because this starts in July, the summer bearing, and we get lots of delicious berries. And by the time those are starting to go away, bees start to come on and start to ripen, so you have just an extended raspberry season. It's just wonderful. So basically, let's say you have raspberries on your property and you're not sure what they are. The best way I would say is to just observe and try to notice when the fruit is coming on. Notice if you're getting berries in the summertime and then nothing in the early fall. If that's the case, then you'll know it's a summer bearing variety. Also, if you decide you just want to cut all your canes down to the ground and see what happens, and that following year, if you get berries the next year after cutting them down to the ground, you'll know that they are an everbearing / fall bearing variety, because you're going to be getting the berries in the fall on the tops of those canes that come up. But if it was a summer bearing, you wouldn't get any raspberries that year at all, because you would just be growing a bunch of primo canes. Now, before I knew the differences between them, right when I first transplanted my summer bearing raspberries about 7 years ago, I read that, yeah, you cut them all to the ground. Didn't realize that it meant for this variety, for the fall bearing, and not for the summer bearing. But so I cut them all down to the ground. Didn't get any raspberries on them that following year. But what I did notice is I got a lot of new green growth. A lot of primo canes grew up. And I think because I cut them all to the ground, I think it made more primo canes. So if you're looking to multiply your plants, I think that might be a good thing to do if you're okay with foregoing a little bit of the berry harvest that year. So that's it, guys. That's all there is to pruning summer bearing versus everbearing / fall bearing. I hope that made sense, and I hope this was helpful to you. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. Leave a comment below. What's your favorite variety of raspberries to grow? I would love to hear from you guys. I love to hear your comments. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And we will see you on the next video. Take care and God bless.